Hi, everyone. Uh, my name is Jesus Rodriguez, and this is Chavista Chronicles from Caracas. And today we have the pleasure and the honor to have as an interviewee a good friend of Orinoco Tribune and of us, Arnold August, one good Canadian friend of Orinoco Tribune. And basically, Arnold August, I want to talk a little bit about him just to introduce him to people that might not know him. Arnold Lagos is a Canadian journalist and lecturer, the author of Democracy in Cuba and the 1997-1998 elections, Cuba and Its Neighbours, Democracy in Motion. That's the second book. And the third book is Cuba-US Relations, Obama and Beyond. He's a journalist. He collaborates with many websites in Latin America, Europe, North America, and the Middle East. And of course, he is a contributor to Orinoco Tribune. And we invite you to visit his website that is www.arnoldaugust.com. So thank you, Arnold, for being with us. I'm going to
It's a
jump.
pleasure.
Go ahead. Go
It's
ahead.
a pleasure for having me, and I really like your background there with the beach. It makes us Canadians quite jealous.
Yes.
Hopefully, in 2021, we'll be able to see each other
I hope so.
in
I hope
in real
so.
in real time in Caracas.
I hope
Yeah.
so. I hope so, my friend. Yes, I'm in the east of Venezuela right now to spend the New Year's with family here. So finally, I move out of my cave in Caracas, where I've been for the last, I don't know, like 10 months or something. So what we do usually, Arnold, and you already know that, is that I will ask you for questions, and then at the end of the podcast, you're gonna be able to ask one or two questions to me, whatever you wanna ask.
Sure.
And the first question that I have, the first question that I have for you is, um, I have seen your in your books, especially in the second one, Cuba and its neighbors, that you deal with elections results and abstentions rates. Based on your experience, what is your view of the Venezuelan 6D parliamentary election results?
Well, that book that you mentioned, Cuba and Its Neighbors, Democracy in Motion. It's actually the second book that I wrote, and that deal in quite some detail in the about Cuban democracy and elections. In the book that you mentioned, there are definite interesting data. I noticed while I was doing my normal work in Cuba following the elections that the voter turnout in Cuba seems to have been dropping, diminishing over a period of time. So I went through all of my notes and I and I checked the old issue of the Cuban official press, and I found out that in 1993 the voting turnout was 99.7%. While over the years, the National Assembly elections or the parliament elections in Cuba take place every 5 years, and the voter turnout was going down regularly until 2013, when that book was published, from 99% to 90%. So while in general the Cuban press does not deal with these type of trends, myself
Hmm.
as a scientist and a political, I had to deal with it, but I didn't do it on my own. I interviewed Cuban uh, 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 researchers, authors, specialists in Cuban elections, and I asked them the questions in the form of an interview. What is your analysis? Why has the voter turnout been going down over the last 5 election terms, which is 15 years? And then based on that, the book was developed, and in fact, the book was published in Cuba in the Spanish version, and many of the Cuban people in the parliament and others took that very seriously. In fact, some of the reforms that have taken place in Cuba has taken into account the voter turnout being going down from 1993 to 2013. So the basic way I operate is when I study election results, whether it's Venezuela, Cuba, United States, I don't compare it to other countries. I only compare it to that country. If you want to talk about
Of
elections in
course.
Cuba, you have to talk at Cuba. The same thing with regards to Venezuela. So based on that, my basic view of the National Assembly elections that took place earlier this month, that it was an important victory for the Venezuelan government and
Yes.
for the Bolivarian Revolution. Why? Uh, I would say the most important thing is that to take into account the context with regards to that famous 31% voter turnout, to look at it in the context of Venezuela and not compare it to any other countries. I noticed when the voter turnout rate was announced, many people, and correctly so, said that this is not fair because the foreign press, focused on the 31% of Venezuela, while the elections were taking place in Europe, where the voter turnout was similar,
Hmm.
or other countries
In
that have voter
Jordania
turnout rate,
too.
and
Yes.
Jordania and midterms in the United States, they also hover around 30-40%. So I agree with that one has to reject the double standards used by the international corporate media when they focus on Venezuela. That being said, I have to look at Venezuela not in comparison to anyone else or whatever, but within the context of Venezuela. And here
Yes.
is my take. Why do I say there was a great victory? Firstly, the the current situation in Venezuela with regards to the National Assembly and elections started, uh, really went quickly once Trump and Justin Trudeau were elected around the same time in 2015, 2016. And then they formed the Lima Group in August 2017. And
That's right.
based on that, Justin Trudeau, as the political, diplomatic uh, arm of the Trump administration, along with Colombia, which in my view is just the military, paramilitary arm of Trump, they ratcheted up the all of their hybrid war against Venezuela. Now, this has been going on since that time, right through till now. But I think it's important to take into account that it really stepped up in January 2019 when Guaido, as supposedly the National Assembly president, uh, uh, nominated himself, declared himself to be president of Venezuela. That was in January 2019.
Yes.
Now, Jesus, from January 2019 until Maduro called for the National Assembly elections a few months ago, there was a nonstop hybrid war going against Maduro, his as a person, against the Bolivarian Revolution, against the Venezuelan political system, nonstop. Now this picked up again once the elections were called a few months ago, and immediately the international media, the Guaido opposition group, went into high gear to try to discredit the elections. Now, I'm saying that Venezuela won that as a victory, but the first victory was as a result of the unity, the civic military
Hmm.
civic military union in Venezuela, as 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 well as millions of Chavistas at the grassroots level. They did not fall to the attempt by Trump and the Lima Group to revolt, to have a mutiny against the leadership and the armed forces, nor to have some kind of a civil disobedience or a revolt against the Maduro government.
Yes.
That itself is a victory. Now that first victory resulted, in my view, in a second victory. And that is the following: because of the heroic resistance of the Venezuelan people over all this time, because of this, they created important divisions among the opposition. Now,
Yes.
this is like a second victory, but this division came out even more clearly when the elections were actually called, and important sections of what some people call the moderate opposition in Venezuela, that is, that they do not agree with Maduro. At the same time, they firmly oppose the sanctions, especially the policy of Guaido of inviting sanctions from countries such as the United States and
Or
Canada and
even invasions.
invasions, yes,
Yes.
like in May 2019, an actual invasion.
Well,
So this was, despite this, the opposition, when the opposition was fractured, and
mhm.
an important section decided to participate in the elections, while the extremist Guaido faction refused to participate in the election, and they called for a boycott. So that itself was a victory. The fact
Yes.
that the resistance resulted in a division, important, explicit division within the ranks of the Venezuelan opposition. And then the elections took place at the beginning of this month, also in the context of a massive disinformation campaign and pressures at this, while Venezuela was fighting effectively against COVID-19, and the elections took place. So in my view, that is like, if you think, the third victory, that the elections actually took place, because there was no doubt the United States and its closest allies, such as Colombia and Canada and Peru, they wanted to make sure that the elections did not even take place, that there would be chaos, and the
That's right.
elections could not. The elections took place. Now, in that context, not only did the elections take place, which was a defeat for those who oppose the government and the Bolivarian Revolution, but the despite all of the pressures, they still got the Bolivarian Revolution still got 31% voter turnout, which in my view is pretty good, taking
Yes.
into account everything that is, all the pressures that were placed against the Bolivarian Revolution and those elections. So my take on just comparing it, as I say, compare Venezuela with Venezuela in the context, that itself was a victory. And I think an important point is that the Maduro government uh, is aware that there are problems. Like just I think a couple of days ago, if I may read it, he said just a couple of days ago, referring not explicitly, perhaps implicitly, to the elections, I want the new National Assembly to challenge the national government and force us to make an important rectification, a great change, and the search for solutions in all fields of life in the country. So you see,
Yes.
I
She
would
have
say
been
that's
saying that
another
a lot. Yes. Yes.
over since the election. So the Venezuelan people and its government, they're perfectly capable to take stock of the election results, including abstention rate, but from the perspective of the Venezuelan people and the program of the government.
Yes, yes, that's true. That's true. And also, I mean, I'm just adding to your answer that the hardship that we Venezuelans are experiencing in recent years, uh, is in my point of view, is also one of the reasons behind the turnout, and I mean, because many Venezuelans, millions of Venezuelans are affected directly by U.S. sanctions, by U.S. blockade, and people are tired. That doesn't mean that they are. Some people talk about the politicization or something like that. I believe that that's not necessarily true. I believe that most important than that is the fact that many of us Venezuelans, regular Venezuelans, are struggling. I mean, sometimes people have to do lines for several days to get gasoline. In recent months, we have been experiencing problems with the gas cylinders, the domestic
Eh,
gas,
Yes.
and I can tell you like a long list of hardships that we have been passing in recent months. Yes, as a direct result of the U.S. blockade. So I just wanted to mention that. But in relation to that first question that you just finished answering, I
Yeah.
wanted to have your opinion on how are the elections in Canada, for example.
Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, uh, you cannot, if you want to look at elections of Canada, you have to look at it in the context of Canada.
Yes,
Canada
yes.
is a capitalist country. Not only that, is also imperialist. So the elections take place in the context of the ruling circles of Canada attempting to renew its so-called mandate
Hmm.
through elections. in order to keep the status quo, and in many cases increase their, in the case of, for example, Canada's foreign policy, actually increasing its aggressive imperialist attitude towards other countries in the world, not only Venezuela, but in the Middle East, supporting Saudi Arabia. Now,
Mm-hmm.
in Canada, it's a bit different. You have the two main political parties, which is the equivalent of the Republicans and Democrats, if you like. That is the Liberals and the Conservatives. But
Mm-hmm.
we are fortunate in Canada, I would say, that after the last elections, there are two parties. One is the Social Democratic National NDP, or National Democratic Party, Social Democrat, and
Mm-hmm.
the other is the Green Party. Now, not necessarily the leaders of these two parties, but some of the elected members to the Canadian Parliament are taking very good stands with regards the question which is very important to us, that is the policy of genocide
Mm-hmm.
against the native peoples in Canada, and
Mm-hmm.
foreign policy with regards to Canada's role internationally, for example, on Venezuela, the Middle East, fueling the war in Saudi Arabia, and many other examples that I can give you. So in Parliament, we are fortunate to have some elected members of Parliament who are taking a good stand on domestic and foreign relations. In fact, I don't know if you recall, but we had Canada under Trudeau wanted to get a seat
I
in
was
the
about to ask you about that. Yes,
okay,
yes, you
and
were very active on that
yeah, this
initiative.
Canada tried to get a seat with the United Nations Security Council. So what happened there is that Canadian Foreign Policy Institute, along with other associations, peace groups, and individuals, important personalities,
Mm-hmm.
especially in Canada, but also internationally, we started a massive grassroots campaign. We had no money. All we had was our feeling that we
Mm-hmm.
do not approve Justin Trudeau's pro-Trump foreign policy. Based on that, we carried out a massive campaign in Canada to win support, and also internationally.
Yes.
We wrote articles, we explained things, we had YouTubes going out to the ambassadors all over the world. And there was another factor that is nothing to do with us directly, but I have to mention it, that it is really important. I have so much respect for your foreign ministry and
Ariasa.
Ariasa and Carlos Ran, and that all of that ministry actually publicly went on Twitter to say
Yes.
that Canada does not deserve this seat. Given the examples, how can you be on the United Nations Security Council when you openly violate the basic laws of the United Nations by applying sanctions and all that? So we
Mm-hmm.
had that help, and it was a really good, a good chemistry developed, I would say, between
Yes.
us and Canada and a foreign ministry. But an important point is that a lot of people, some members of Parliament, elected members of Parliament, joined us in that
Definitely.
successful attempt to reject Canada's bid to get a seat on the United Nations. And now, based on that, we're really happy. We had a very successful Zoom conference with Jorge Arias, so I call it, in Canada last August. It was really successful. It was
Yes.
watched by thousands of people. And many of the people who supported us in the no campaign against Canada's bid are also supporting us in our current campaign, demanding that we want a change in direction of Canadian foreign policy that is not in lockstep with the United States. And we're making some headway. And to continue responding to your question, members of Parliament, current ones, as well as members of Parliament who were members before but have since retired, they've joined us in a long list of Canadians demanding a review of Canada's foreign policy. We want an independent foreign policy. And in that context, as far as I'm concerned, one of the most important points is Canada must abandon the Lima Group, and Canada should respond to the
Uh,
gesture made by Jorge Ariasa in August. Despite everything, let us discuss. You have my phone number. Call me.
yes.
Why not? Canadian government should speak to the Maduro government.
Yes. Yes, that's the way it should be. My second question had to deal with what we are already talking right now, but I'm gonna answer it anyway to
Go.
connect it what already has been saying. My second question is: do you see an improvement in the Canadian foreign policy towards Venezuela, a less submissive approach to the U.S.? That's basically what we has been you
Uh,
has been talking about
you
for the
mean
last minutes.
as a result of the elections in the United States?
No, I mean as
As,
no,
well,
basically,
basic.
if the Canadian foreign policy might have do you expect that there will be a change or something? And now that you are talking about this new campaign that you are having, trying to
Yeah.
push Canada out of the Lima Group, or I believe that maybe you can tell us a little bit
Well,
more.
I think that one has to be quite truthful. That is, while this campaign made an important headway in Canada internationally, aside from some exceptions, Canada, the land of freedom and freedom of the press, and all that, the basic mainstream media ignores the whole thing. They just forgot about the fact that Trudeau lost the bid, and especially why he lost the bid, because it was a rejection of Canada's imperialist foreign policy. Now, an interesting situation is developing that Biden is going to be a president of the United States soon, and he has to try to perhaps make things look a bit different. And there is talk that he might want to drop Guaido in favor of someone else, but always with the same goal, change. So
Aus
to
Maduro.
oust Maduro. That's the basic line. So you might even have a an embarrassing situation for Justin Trudeau, whereby Biden withdraws American traditional support for Guaido and supports someone else, or have some other adopt some other tactic in order to bring about the same result that is always the same. You say to oust Maduro. That is the basic line. So if there is a change in Canadian foreign policy, it will be because they are following once again what Washington says with regards to Venezuela. Before it was
That's
Trump, and now it's Joe Biden. So either way, on a long-term basis, the basic goal of Canada, United States, and other countries in Latin America and even Europe is to oust Maduro, and we cannot stand for this at all. And we hope, if there's any chance of a discussion between Biden and Maduro. I know Maduro is also always ready to discuss with anyone. He's very
yes.
courageous.
He's always
Let
open to that.
yeah, let the discussion take place. But one thing I have to mention with regards to that, there was actually a small chance that Biden, in fact Trump was willing to speak with Maduro at one point during his mandate, but it was indicated in John Bolton's book that
Yes.
Maduro was unhappy with Guaido. They were getting nowhere, and they're looking to see some other alternative, maybe even speaking with Maduro. Now, who spoiled that plan? It was Biden. He said, "Look, it's written in the book." The book, John Bolton's book, that Trump is willing to cuddle up to dictators, and they say the same thing with regards to Russia, with regards to China. So overall, while the rhetoric from the new Biden administration, uh, as far as outward appearances, it gives the impression that is different, that is more liberal, open-minded than the Trump administration. That administration could actually move more to the right with regards to Venezuela, with regards to Russia, with regards to China. And Canada follows the United States unless we in Canada make a major change in the political scene, in the
Do
parliament,
you see
in the
that
streets.
coming? Do you see that coming someday in the
Yeah,
future, in the
well, I
near
mean,
future? I mean,
well, I know
what
maybe
needs?
maybe not in my lifetime, but it's bound to
That's
happen at some
bad.
time,
That's
because the thing is that outside of Canada, there's a lot of people underestimate the very strong anti-imperialist sentiment of I would say the majority or many Canadians. If
Yes,
Canadians knew,
yes. I'm
if
impressed
Canadian,
by the amount of Canadians that, for example, they read Orinoco Tribune. I mean, Canadians are the second. I mean, Canada is the second country of readers in the name in relation to the readers of Orinoco Tribune, and there are a lot of progressive people up there. So I don't understand the scene. But
yeah,
now
well,
we are
it's
talking about the third question. Let me read the third question because we are already there. So let me read
okay.
it
Go ahead.
just to
Okay.
to framework your what you have already been saying about Biden. The third question is: many are talking about the return of the pink tide to Latin America. So my question is, what is your take on that, and how do you see Biden administration in that possible scenario?
Well, um,
You
uh,
already answered part of the question.
well, I think with regards to the pink tide, as it's called, it definitely got an important boost with the elections in Mexico. That was a major difference. People might be quibbly with regard to the new president, but there's a major difference in policy of Mexico with regards to the United States, with regards to Venezuela, as compared to the situation before. That was one step. And the other important step, I think, was the complete reversal of the situation in Bolivia. I'd like
Yes.
to use the fact that I'm on your program here to salute the Bolivian people. They
Yes.
fought, with their bare hands for almost a year against a fascist dictatorship.
And they surprised a lot of people. I mean, even me, I was kind of with low moral with what happened in Bolivia, and the
Yes,
way
yeah,
they took out, and they somehow show us that what Evo did in Bolivia was real. But I don't
yeah.
want to
That's really
interrupt you.
important.
Go ahead.
No, no, no. That's I think Bolivia is really important. Like I feel the same way
And
as you
inspiring.
do. Yeah, because not just as an election that took place, but in my view, based on the work that I've been doing all these years, the most important feature of what happened in Bolivia
Hmm.
was that it overturned for the whole world to see, or the world that wanted to see, because many just closed their eyes, right? For the
Yes,
whole
yes.
world to see that indigenous people, the poor people in Bolivia, know how to govern themselves. They do not need United States, Canada, or Europe to tell them what to do. On the contrary, in order to govern themselves, they have to go against all of the Eurocentric and US centric preconceived views that the people in the South are not able to govern themselves. That my take on that was that they won the election, but it was a profound change in Latin American politics, and it's giving a big
That's
boost
true.
to the pink tide. And of course, then you had what I would say the victory in just December 6th in Venezuela, and
Hmm.
we're coming to another point in Ecuador. Elections are taking place very soon in Ecuador, and the chances are very good that finally in the sense all of North America,
Progressive.
Canada, Latin, we are finally going to get rid of that traitor,
Hmm.
Moreno,
Yes.
and have a progressive new government there. But even then, we talk about the pink tide. It's getting better, but at the same time, Evo Morales and the government there pointed out that the issue of an attempted coup in Bolivia is still on the agenda of the United States and
That's
perhaps of
true.
Canada. They had to accept it. It was just such a landslide victory. They had to recognize the new government, but they did it half-heartedly. For example, in Canada, it was not the prime minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, who congratulated the new elected president of Bolivia. He just had his foreign minister make a quick call to the newly elected president in Bolivia. That's their way of showing, okay, we have no choice. We have to recognize you,
Hmm.
but it's not over yet. U.S. imperialism, Canadian imperialism, they have their goal. They don't give up their goals,
That's
and
true.
that is dominate Latin America. So the pink tide, yes, is developing. At the same time, because it's developing, You could also have a further backlash in Canada, United States, and Europe to try to stop that movement
To
from taking
happen.
place. Like what's happening in Venezuela is really important, not only in terms of the victory that took place in December 6th, but how Venezuela, with so much talent, as far as the president is concerned, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, is developing such good relationship with countries such as Iran, with countries such as China. This is a major change in international politics that goes beyond, if you like, beyond the pink tide. We're talking about a major reconstructing of the geopolitics in the world. And Latin
Mhm.
America is once again at the very center of it by not refusing all pressures. We want to have relations with Russia. You don't like it? Too bad. We want to have relations with Iran. You don't like it? Too bad. We want to have relations with China. Too bad. And Cuba's doing the same thing.
Yeah,
Cuba's being squeezed to death by Trump, but they are developing the relationship with Russia, with China, Iran, etc. So
that's true.
the pink tide, yes, but even more than that is the pink tide as one of the solid foundations for a reconfiguration of the international political scene. That is an increased impetus to the multipolar world against U.S. attempt at hegemony. I just read some great news 2 days ago. You probably saw that it's expected that China will be the #1 economy in the world in 2023. Was that it? 2023 or very
It
soon?
was like
It's,
it's like 5 years before what
yeah,
people
before,
were
yeah,
expecting.
yeah, like
Yes,
some people even on the left, don't like to praise China. All that. I mean,
yes.
What's wrong with China? I mean,
Yes,
they
yes.
have,
There's the whole discussion about inter-imperialist,
yes,
whatever,
and then
and
you
they
have all that.
think, yeah,
Yeah, right. So I think China, developing its ties with Venezuela and other countries, and Bolivia and all. This is very good. I
and
think
we
that
don't
we're.
see them as empires. It's different. Our relation with Russia and
Nah,
China, and some crazy people even dare to say that Cuba and Venezuela behave like in an imperialist something, and you
yeah,
say like,
sure.
what? I mean, come
Well,
on. I mean, it's different. Our relations with Cuba, Iran, China, Russia is a relation of cooperation, of a strategic
I
alliance based on what you just said, based on a vision of a different, geopolitical war scenario. But anyway, I believe that the
I,
point of the question is Biden. I mean, I don't see that Biden will change too much in
in
that
fact,
pink tide, right?
no, I agree with you. In fact, if you look at what Biden has been saying lately, like his great slogan, America is back. Who the hell wants America to be back? And Canada, we don't want America to go home.
Yes,
Does
yes.
Venezuela want
We need
America
it.
to be back? Does
No.
Yemen want America to be? Did a Palestinian?
Uh,
No. Yankee
mm,
go home is still pretty good. We used that in
yes,
1960s in Canada, and it still applies
it's
very
still
well.
valid.
So
Yes.
what does it mean? When Biden said America is back, they want to recuperate the lost territory or influence that, according to them, Trump squandered because he did a lot of things unilaterally. It reminds me a lot of Obama. If you remember Obama, he said
Yes.
he voted against the war in Iraq. Why? It was a stupid war because the United States did not involve its allies in this in the aggression against Iraq. The same thing is happening now. Uh, Biden is unhappy, and including the left wing of the Democratic Party is unhappy that the
I like your quotations when you say left wing.
America. Go ahead.
That I like your
Well,
quotations
we
when
could
you
do.
say the democratic win, the socialist win in the Democratic Party, because
Yeah,
I
right.
see the
You know,
same.
so that's what Biden is up. He wants to recuperate the lost influence or the lost prestige, if you like, of the United States that was squandered by Trump, in order to
Mm,
better apply the basic principle of U.S. domination, which, by
exactly.
the way, goes all the way back to the mid 17th century. with the pilgrims, America, the 13 colonies being the light upon the hill to show to
Settlers.
is it the settlers who are responsible for showing the peoples of the world the way forward. So this is the basic. Biden is he is trying to recuperate the lost prestige that Trump. As a result of Trump, in order to have the same policy but more effective, it's basically the same roadmap that Obama had
Yes.
to replace Bush. So this is the vicious circle of the two-party system in
In
the
the
United
U.S.
States,
Mhm.
so-called two-party system.
Yes. Yes, that's true. That's true. I agree with you 100%. I don't see like too much difference between Democrats and Republicans, especially in foreign policy. But if you see deep inside, even in U.S. internal policy, that's always also very similar.
Yeah,
But
very.
anyway,
Yes,
yes,
go ahead.
like the fourth question, my last one is this one. How do you see the future of socialism and grassroots struggles in the US and Canada?
Well, as far as the U.S. is concerned, the best thing would be to invite someone from the revolutionary groups in the United States, So,
Yes.
but I would just like my view, and I've published a lot on it in my first book and the second book and articles. I write a lot about the United States. In fact, I've been more concentrated on American politics than on Canadian politics over the years. And
Hmm.
my basic view is that when one looks at a country, we have to look at it specifically, the specific nature of the country, to discuss democracy, discuss revolution or change. And in the United States, one cannot avoid the basic historic fact that in the United States, the state there, state in the sense, state, federal, is a
Hmm.
vestige of slavery. And in order to oppose that, one has to embrace the revolutionary African American tendency that was rekindled again in the 1960s and 1970s with the Black Panther Party. And what is going on in the United States now? I mean, during the George Floyd rebellion, I won't use the word demonstrate. It was a rebellion.
Yes, yes.
The Afro-American revolutionaries were the clearest in pointing out that the problem is not just race as such, but it's a capitalist system, it's imperialism. And we have to, while we oppose the war being waged against African Americans in the United States, we also have to oppose the war being waged by the United States against other countries in the world, especially the third world. So without, there are several, there's movement going on in the United States to reorganize an alternative to the two-party system. But that's up to the Americans to do that. The only thing, my only view is that you can't get anywhere and unless you take as a starting point the problem of the racist state and those who most firmly oppose the racist state as part of capitalism, as part of imperialism.
That's true. That's true. So we don't see too much, you don't expect too much good news around those issues of socialism and grassroots in the US or Canada, right?
Well, I do, but definitely not from the Democratic Party.
Mm.
Definitely not. Is so-called progressive wing. If you just
And
there was a
especially with the Democratic power, I mean, the Democratic Party in power
yeah,
is more complicated because there's some always some sort of co-option of the Democratic Party
uh, uh,
over the unions, over Black Lives Matter. So,
exactly.
so
That's really important. And in fact, someone else, another person, another journalist, asked me in an interview that saying that elections in the United States is historical. I said, yeah, I agree with that, but not for the same reason that you are saying. I think it's historical because the first time in history you have two Republican parties fighting it out for power.
yes,
What
yes,
the Democratic leadership did was shaft Bernie Sanders, even though I don't think he's a great soldier, shaft Bernie Sanders and open the doors wide open to the Republican Party, who pretty much control the whole situation there. So people in the United States are dealing with this now. I think that you talked about co-optation. I think I wrote an article. I think it was reprinted in Orinoco Tribune in collaboration with an Afro-American colleague of mine, Netfa Freeman. And in that we quote another journalist saying, this is when the movement was still developing before the election. If anything stops that movement, grass move, grassroots revolutionary movements from developing, it will not be the army, the National Guard of Trump. It would rather be the so-called left wing of the Democratic Party who will co-opt it and just make it a slogan of Black Lives Matter, co-opt it into the electoral system. And that is exactly what happened. If you recall, just 2 weeks ago,
Yes.
this past week, two more Black people were killed in the United States. There was no real, aside from those very small localities, there was no real massive opposition to that. Why? Because the elections and the demagogy of Biden and the vice president and his whole identity politics, which by the way makes me sick,
Yes.
if you don't mind me
Yes.
saying so.
Yes. Yes.
That
Me
whole
too.
politics, it co-opted that movement and diffused the revolutionary struggle that was taking place in the streets of United States. So let us see who breaks away from that control by the Democratic. It's often said the revolutionaries in the United States say that the Democratic Party is a gravedigger of mass movements
Yes.
in
Yes.
Canada. It's similar like the Liberal Party in Canada. My view, like the Liberals, the Democrats, they are far more dangerous to revolutionary mass movements, to those seeking socialism, than the right wing. The right wing, we know that where you're coming from, but those
Yes.
Democrats, it's something else.
So basically, we can make a conclusion that we don't see too much positive uh, near future for real progressive organizations in the U.S. At least taking into consideration this new Biden administration, right?
Well, it definitely does not help because of co-optation. But I would
Yes.
just, to get a real feel of the situation there would be good if you can invite someone, for example, from the Alliance, Black Alliance for Peace, which is a
Yes.
revolutionary organization, and for example, as well as Code Pink and others who are
Hmm.
interested in opposing the two-party system. And as Americans, they could give their view
A
on how
better
they see
overview.
how
That's
say
true.
they view the future of revolutionary socialism in the United States.
That's true. That's true. Now is your turn.
Okay, I have a question. Okay, now the thing is, you know by work, a lot of it is written in English, and it's produced in Orinoco or in your Tribune and all
Orinoco
that.
Tribune.
Yeah, but
Yes.
I would like to know and like, what my question is, how much of our work against the Trudeau government, face to face opposition to Trudeau's imperialist, how much is this known in Venezuela? I know, for example, because I write in Spanish as well. My articles are reproduced in Telesur. I don't know how
Hmm.
many Venezuelans have access to Telesur. It even has been produced on a couple of occasions in the website of the Foreign Ministry. And of course, Ariasa knows it
Hmm.
very well. Carlos Sran from that same ministry also knows it very
Yes.
well. Okay, and they write about it, they tweet it. But aside from that, like ordinary Venezuelans, do they know about us in Canada? Hey, this is not a country of snow. This is a country of anti-imperialism. This is a country that
Yes.
opposes U.S. imperialism, that
Yes.
opposes Trudeau as one of the most servile uh, prime ministers in the history of Canada, servile to the United States. Like, how do people know about us, at the grassroots level in Venezuela?
I
The
believe
the real Canada.
it's kind of complicated because Canada have the course of being always shadowed by the US, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So
Uh,
for many ordinary Venezuelans, at least the Chavista ones, I mean, we see the US as the empire are the bad guys, and in the background maybe some people see Canada, but not that much, you know what I mean?
Well,
So
unfortunately, you're right. In fact,
I'm trying. Yes, go ahead, go ahead.
no, I'm just saying that what you said is right. Not that much about Canada. I often know even Latin American journalists, revolutionaries, they would write a lot about U.S. imperialism against Venezuela. Even they would mention the Lima Group. Okay, but I never see any of them mention that the fact that
Yes.
Canada is doing, Justin Trudeau has been doing the dirty work for
Yes, yes, and they are
Trump
kind
in
of like
Venezuela.
the managers of the Lima Group somehow, you
That's
know.
right. Yeah,
But no
along
one
with
sees it that much because people pay most at much at even us the Chavistas and the media. In the media, we focus our batteries towards Washington most of the time. So
yes,
it's
but
kind of
just
complicated, but going to the point of your question, which is that initiative that you took in relation to the Canadian seat on the United Nations. I believe that a lot of people, educated audiences, I'm talking about, were aware of that initiative here in Venezuela. I remember that I have read on different coverage about the result of the Canada not being Canadian candidacy not being voted. It was covered as widely in Venezuela. So somehow I believe that there was an impact on from this particular campaign in Venezuela.
that's good.
So I
That's
believe
encouraging.
that, yes, and I believe that that's important because that make people understand that the whole problem is not only the U.S. I mean, uh, countries like Canada, and I'm not talking about Canadians. I'm talking about the government of Justin Trudeau in particular, has been key in implementing these regime change policies from Washington. So
No,
that's
I
kind
agree.
of my answer.
I
Uh,
understand. I understand. I just like to add one thing that perhaps it could be relate to the Venezuelan people, and that is with regards to the role of Canada and the Lima. My view is studying the situation very carefully, all the documents. The Lima Group would not exist for 1 second if it was not for Justin Trudeau in Canada. That's
yes,
why
some people.
that's why it's hanging on and it's still operating. It is because of Canada, and I think it's important in Latin America. People, as does the Venezuela, look into the work that we're doing in Canada against
Yes.
Justin Trudeau as a firm ally of the United States with its own imperialist interests in Latin America.
And that campaign that you mentioned about, pushing Trudeau to get out of Lima Group will be, I believe that it sounds very good, at least to my ears. I believe that it might have a good acceptance by, people in Venezuela. And I believe that all over Latin America, at least progressive people. So it's nice to hear that you are thinking and doing something like that, or you're
Yes,
already doing that. I'm not
yes,
sure. Yes.
yes. We're already doing that.
So is that your last question, or do you want me to?
Yeah. If we have time, I'm really impressed with the work that you're doing. I noticed you've increased the visibility of your newspaper, and
Yes,
it's
yes.
really impressive. I mean, I personally like it a lot because not only does it deal with U.S. imperialism, of Venezuelan and Latin American resistance to U.S. imperialism, but I would say in the tradition of uh, of Hugo Chavez and now Maduro is also very linked and supportive of the revolutionary struggles in places such as the United States and to a lesser extent in Canada. I think that is really good. We need that type
We try to
of
do
help,
that. Yes.
and I think that it's important that we have people who read English and Venezuela or elsewhere have a better understanding of what we in the belly of the beast, whether it's directly in the United States or
Yes.
indirectly in Canada, what we are doing against U.S. imperialism. So, how do you operate? There are a lot of fantastic websites in the United States
Yes.
such as the gray zone,
Yes.
just to mention one, Code Pink, and others. Like how is your work seen by by these comrades in the United States? I hope they don't see this as
Competitive.
competition, as
Yes.
competition.
Yes.
So
Yes. No.
that's no.
No, I don't think so. I actually, I'm very close to the guys from the gray zone, and I
Yes,
see them as an inspiration. I see them
yes,
as a role model, as something that
yeah,
I try to compare to them, not in the competitive way, but because they do a great job. So I personally know Ben Norton, and I interact with him a lot.
okay,
And I have met with Max Blumenthal and Anya Parenhill,
uh,
but I don't see that there's that kind of competition. We of course, at least in the case of Orinoco Tribune, we try to see the good uh, websites. There are not too many
hmm,
progressive websites that are in English that are around there to
yeah,
to see how to do things better, but also to connect,
yeah,
so that's why we try to be in contact with the guys from the gray zone and with other websites in Venezuela. For example, we try to be in contact with people from La Tabla, which is an
yeah,
investigative
uh,
website that do a nice work in digging into the data,
yeah.
so they do a nice work also, and we always interact with
Mission,
them.
Mission Verdad.
Misión Verdad also, I interact with the guys with Misión Verdad, especially with William Serafino and
Yes,
Diego Sequera.
yes.
So we don't, at least in Orinoco Tribune, we don't see it as competition. But now that you talk about competition, I feel that sometimes people tend to see like
Mhm.
anything that is similar to them as competition, and I believe that that's bad. I believe
Yeah.
that you should twist that perception and see it in a cooperative way, and if you do that, you will empower the whole network of websites and organizations that are trying to present a different perspective of reality, which
Mhm.
is like what we try to do in Orinoco Tribune with very, with very low resources, but we do it because we love what we do and because we are committed to the cause of Chavismo, but also to the whole solidarity movement that is not embedded in Venezuela or Latin America. It goes beyond, and that's why we try to cover the movements in Canada, in the U.S., in the Middle East, in other countries, because we know that there's people fighting everywhere to try to change the world. So that's it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think in Canada we have other websites. For example, Canadian Dimension is quite well known.
Yes,
You
I know
also have
Canadian Dimension,
the Canada Files,
Canada
Rabble, just to
Files.
mention a few.
That's
And
true. I
I
know
think the
them.
important thing is whether United States or Canada, we all have to work together because we're up against a
Yes.
very important enemy. That is the use by the United States, Canada, and the West of the media in order to completely
Yeah.
submerge,
And we need
to
to
cover up.
cooperate. Now that you are talking
Just
about
we
that,
have
we
to
need to cooperate. And sometimes people feel like that we have to compete because
no.
competition is in the blood of many people. But what you are saying is very important. I mean, we at least in Orinoco Tribune are open to cooperate with anyone that reach us, and sometimes we reach others. And when we do that is within that spirit, the spirit of cooperation, the spirit of trying because we believe and we are convinced that if we cooperate, we are going to be stronger. So, so,
Exactly.
so, so, yes. Thank you.
No,
Arnold,
no, thank you very much,
for
Jesus. It's a
accepting
pleasure.
the invitation.
No, thank you for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to collaborate with you. In 2021, we will collaborate
I hope
even more
so. I
so.
hope so. I hope so. And thank you for all your writings
Oh,
and
it's a
for
pleasure.
all the coverage that you do on Venezuela and the Canadian foreign policy. It was an honor for me to have you today. And I thank you again for accepting our invitation. And we hope that we can keep working together.
For sure.
Bye bye, my friend.
Bye bye.
Let me stop this recording.